Hello again, everyone. Good to have you still with us. It's a mammoth day four. It's a monster of a day, but we're making good progress. We're roughly two-thirds of the way through now. So a few more sessions still to bring you today. And we've got some really, really interesting topics. And this next roundtable is certainly on one of those. Just before we continue, though, just another brief reminder for any journalists present, it is the Newsroom by EFA to access those news wires, which are written in English, Spanish, and Arabic. And also via our media partner, SNTV, they'll be getting the content from selected panels and firing that out to their clients across the globe. So if you are involved in media, then I'm sure you will be fully catered for, fed and watered. Right, we're going to be just changing tack now. We were talking a lot about AI and digital innovation. We've been, crossing so many topics today. We're going to be focusing squarely on football leagues, and in particular, those who are members of European leagues on this continent. One of the most complex things, I guess, about handling COVID-19 at a global level is that you've got different countries with different decision makers, be it governments or essentially scientists, with different approaches to dealing with the pandemic and trying to suppress the virus. And we're all still dealing with this now. Football itself was its own microcosm of that. You saw the different outcomes to the top division seasons across the continent. So France decided to declare the Ligue 1 season over. PSG were crowned champions without having to resume their campaigns. They decided to call it a day there. And then the likes of Belgium, the Netherlands, Scotland, they decided to follow suit and curtail their campaigns too. But the Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A all returned behind closed doors. They completed their outstanding matches. All in all, according to European leagues, 23 domestic leagues found a way back in 2019-20. 6 didn't, and one, which was a very different case, Kazakhstan, because it is a summer league. But clearly, in whatever country, with new seasons now underway, a lot of changes had to happen very, very quickly to make stadiums COVID secure, to improve match operations, adapting the calendar, of course, with later starts and more congestion. But what has it actually been like to be in the midst of all that, in between the fans and the broadcasters, the clubs and the players, with everyone demanding answers? Well, we're going to get 3 perspectives here, as well as of the body which represents those national leagues. So let's introduce your speakers. The CEO at the Scottish Professional Football League, the SPFL, Neil Doncaster, a General Secretary and CEO of Svensk Elite Football, Mats Enquist, and CEO of the Swiss Football League, Claudius Schaefer. And your facilitator for this discussion, it's great to see him again, is the Deputy General Secretary at European Leagues, Alberto Colombo. Great to see you all. Should be another really interesting discussion. Over to you.
Thank you very much, David, for the nice introduction. Well, just a few words from my side before introducing our distinguished colleagues. I mean, football has been definitely hit quite strongly by COVID during the past month. But I think it is absolutely fair to state that the leagues and the football industry in general has been responded in an extraordinary way to the pandemic. If we consider that we are in the middle of the second wave and that most of the countries have very strict lockdown that are affecting the life of the normal people in the society. But in the meanwhile, all the leagues and the competition organized at domestic level across Europe are currently playing and delivering football every week, every weekend, and they are fulfilling their contractual obligation with their commercial partners. They are delivering football to fans, and it is definitely due to the boundless effort of leagues manager that they have to manage complex logistic operation on a daily basis. They have to negotiate on a weekly basis, I would say, with governments and with health authorities in order to adapt and improve their protocols and procedures according to the evolution of the pandemic. But it's also fair to say that all this was also possible thanks to the enhanced cooperation at the international level between the European Leagues family, between UEFA, because we have also to remind the fact that the past season was, we have been able to resume the season thanks also to an agreement that we have been able to find in terms of calendar opportunities, right, for the leagues to finish in late July and the UEFA to finish their competition in August. So that all this was possible thanks to a great cooperation between the member leagues and between also the international stakeholders. But having said that, we have Neil, Mats, and Claudius, and I guess that is more interesting to listen their opinions and their talks. And I will start with Mats Enquist because we are only 2 match days to go before finishing the season. Because in Sweden, as you are aware, we have a summer season, but that started quite late. So that Mats, the challenge that you have to face to run a complete season through COVID in a super congested calendar, because you have been starting the season basically 2 months, almost 2 months after the normal start, but you are finishing in time, Mats.
Yes, thank you. Nice to meet you all, even if we're not meeting other than digital world right now. But I'll try to share some of our initial findings. We are, as Alberto said, very close to closing our league. We only have 2 rounds left before we go into winter and start thinking about next season. So we have some experiences. First of all, our biggest problem was that our league should have been starting in April, and that was when everybody more or less was trying to fathom the fact what COVID-19 would be, from something that would briefly affect us to the big pandemic that it actually turned out to be. Our first problems, in describing it short, was actually to get our clubs together and discuss what happens if we can't start the league in the 1st of April. And we were actually banned from playing football. So we couldn't play training matches and we couldn't play senior matches at all. So we had no choice. We had to look at postponing the league. So we set up an agreement with the clubs. We started discussing with authorities as best we could. They were quite busy with other stuff than football. And we planned for start early June to mid-June, because that was the absolute latest point where we could sort of push together a league that would still finish in the end of 2020. So it affected a lot. We had to take a public discussion to get even to contact the authorities. We had to build up protocols to ensure them that we could actually play football in a safe manner. Everything was so new. And we gradually got the authorities to accept, and finally got the acceptance to start play on the 14th of June. We played for a very congested calendar, and we realized very quickly that there was absolutely no room to move matches. We wouldn't be able to finish up the league, and this obviously affects sponsor agreements, how we can handle the sporting success of having a full league delivered, etc., TV agreements. There was a million factors that we needed to take into consideration. So we, in end of March, we took a meeting with all our clubs and said, if we're going to move the league now to the point where we actually was able to start in mid-June, there is no room to move. So how do we handle it? And we took the leagues, the top 2 tiers in Sweden, Allsvenskan and Superettan, and all 32 clubs agreed that we took a joint decision. We are not going to move any games. Whatever happens, we will play, and we will play with juniors if we have to. And this was quite an important discussion to be united on, because any movements due to COVID-19, we would not have been able to fulfill the full season as we actually have been doing right now. So now only 2 games left, as Alberto said. We had to unite that the sporting impact during a COVID crisis has to be the club's responsibility. So even if you can really feel for a club that is affected by COVID-19, it is still the club's responsibility to handle it and to only produce players on the pitch that are not diseased and are healthy. So we try to set up sort of a chain of responsibilities that would be working and could also cover if there were local outbreaks of COVID-19. In the mid-season, we sort of got a discussion. We actually covered this quite well. We had very few matches that were seriously affected. It was only actually more or less one team in the second tier that had so many players away that I think they had 2 rounds where they have to play with a lot of reserves. But that's all. So otherwise, in both tiers, we were playing more or less with full people, 1 or 2 people might have been gone from time to time, but everybody's come back. Nobody's been away for a long time. Nobody has been that seriously ill, fortunately. But we had to handle the fact, what happens if the regional authorities say that it's not suitable for you to play, because from having this as a central discussion in Sweden, it turned out to be, I'm sure Claudius will speak a lot about that. We don't have cantons like they have in Switzerland, but we have regional authorities that have a lot to say about health control. So they started discussing whether it was appropriate to play football during this crisis, and we actually had to prove from week to week that we could handle it with our protocols. But we had the situation where one of the clubs was actually a local authority said that you cannot play football. And that turned out to be a hard nut to crack, because they could put a team to the pitch. So in our rules, in our way of being united in the league, they could actually play. There was no problem. But the health authority said, you should shut down everything you do. And that turned out to be a tough thing to crack. So we said that we cannot move matches because there's no more room. And ultimately, the COVID-19 problem must come first. So if a club actually cannot play, the doctors say it, or the health authorities, they actually have to produce a walkover. And then the debate came, is that fair? If a club goes into a walkover situation because of the disease, should they be expelled from the league? So we actually took it with the FA, and we constructed a special COVID-19 appliance of the walkover rule during this year. So any club that would need to stop their business so they couldn't play, since they can't move matches, and we don't move matches in Sweden, they could get just a loss of 1 game, 0-3. That would be the only impact. And based on that, with the protocols we have been using, and with officers on all the games, I'd say we had a really strong season, and we could deliver a sporting fair season. I think everybody wants to have the fans back. That is the next big issue. But we could play football during the whole season. So I think I'll end there, Alberto.
Yes, thank you very much for your initial talks, and we will definitely touch base on the issues of fans. You were mentioning the constant relation that leagues needs to have with the authorities. And Claudius, you have been very in touch with the Swiss government, and also with all the cantons, more local level in Switzerland. And can you develop on these, and how has been the relation with the government, with the health authorities, but also the important financial support that your government decided to provide to the football industry? Claudius.
Hello to everybody of the World Football Summit. Very nice to meet here online. These are heavy times. I just reflected that this situation started 9 months ago. It's 9 months that we are in this terrible situation, and I remember it was in the beginning of March that we had a club reunion, because the government took first decisions, and one of the first decisions was to not allow any more people to the stadiums. So we needed to have a decision by the clubs: do we play without spectators, or do we postpone matches? And first in March we said, okay, maybe this will be over in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Let's postpone the matches. So we did, and but then in the end, it was not only that we had to postpone those matches. We then had also the lockdown in Switzerland. And I remember when we had the first press conference here in the league's offices. I remember we had 50 journalists in a quite small room. That wouldn't be possible anymore in these times. what it was then. And I said for the first time, a Swiss Football League, where the gate receipts are of such a high importance, it's about 30 to 40% in an annual club budget. We will need support from the government. And this was quite the headline the next day in the newspapers, also criticized by parts of the politicians. Why is now football asking for help in this situation? But in the end, I think it was the right thing to do from the beginning to show how important gate receipts are for Swiss football. And so on this moment, we started our discussions, but also our lobbying in Swiss politics. And for everyone who knows a little bit Swiss politics, it's a very democratic country where you have different stakeholders. You have the government, you have the parliament. And if the government took a decision, you also have to go through the parliament. So that's quite complicated. And but because we started so early with these discussions, we are now, I would say, in a comfortable situation, because we have very good contacts to the government. We have very good contacts to members of the parliament of all the parties, really from far left to far right, I would say so. And we found solutions. The first solution was that the government decided to give to our clubs loans, and these loans is quite a huge amount. It's 25% of the costs of the yearly costs of a club of season 18-19. So this is the basis to make the calculation. And these are loans, and those loans, the clubs, they get it without interest, and they have to pay it back in 10 years. So they have quite a lot of time to pay it back. They have no interest rates, and this is a really important help from the government. And it went also through the parliament. So now we have this, and the clubs, they can ask for those loans from 1st of December. All in all, this is 100 million Swiss francs, so it's a huge amount. Secondly, we had also a good situation, and also with the work with the government, and it was quite a success that I think Switzerland was the first country who really opened the stadium again for the spectators. We had a decision that 2/3 of the places can be filled in the stadiums. And unfortunately, then we had the second wave, and we had another decision that now again we play with between 0 and 50 spectators. But the good thing was that the government was really aware how important gate receipts are for Swiss football. And so the government decided 1 week ago that they pay to the clubs the amount of 2/3 of the ticketing income, again, basis season 18-19. And these amounts, the clubs, they don't have to pay back. So this was really a very good decision that we received 1 week ago. But for sure, there are some criteria that the clubs have to fulfill. And those criteria are quite heavy. And it concerns heavily the wages. So if a club takes those payments, they have to reduce their wages by 20%, but only the wages above a certain amount. In Switzerland, this is an amount of 150,000 Swiss francs a year. So all the players, they get more than 150,000 francs a year. their salaries should be reduced by 20%. So now we have quite heavy legal questions, because if you have a player's contract between a player and the club, it's not really possible that the club just is announcing from now on you get 20% less of your salary. So again, we are in discussions with the Swiss Parliament that we can change some of these regulations, some of this law, and I'm quite good that we will find a solution here. So, and I think this is a very important step that that we did to have those good contacts with the government. It was much more difficult regarding the competition on the competition side, because here you have the cantons who are responsible, so not the Swiss government at this moment, at this stage. And here we have quite very big differences. We had unfortunately to postpone quite a lot of matches. I think till now of the new season we had to postpone 9 matches, and this heavily affects our competition. And we were asking all those cantons if we can't have like a Swiss solution. But we discussed this before the season, and there it seemed that we will find answers, but we didn't get a formal answer. But then in the end, we were facing quarantines for whole teams because one player was infected. So they sent the whole team for 10 days to quarantine. And so we were facing a lot of difficulties with the competition. And on this side, we've seen that the Swiss political model we have federalism in Switzerland, so the cantons have a lot of power, and we couldn't find a common solution with those cantons. And it's a pity, and now we have like to hope that we don't have too many quarantine situations anymore in our league, because we can't postpone matches every week. We still have a winter break of 5 weeks, okay, but the players they didn't have this break in summer, so they need sort of a break, that we don't have injured player. So here we are in talks with the cantonal governments, but these talks are difficult. And they said one of the explanation was that they only want to find solutions for quarantine for people who are working in health business, because they said if we give an exception to football, then other businesses like the hotel sector, the restaurants, they're also coming, and so we can't find only solution for the football sector. That was the explanation. So you see, we have a good situation, I would say, in financial discussions. We have quite a difficult situation when it comes to the COVID-19 situation.
Yeah, thanks, Claudius. Of course, there are always pros and cons, and football is always under the spotlight, right, over the media, over the politicians. So the management and of the relation is always very sensitive. Neil, coming to you, and maybe we can make a step back, right? Because you have, if we see this panel, you have a quite, let's say, unique experience, right? Because as David said at the beginning, you have been one of the leagues that, due to the decision of the government, was obliged to curtail the past season. So that was, of course, a heavy process. That you managed, you went through together with your clubs and your FA and all the stakeholders. Can you develop on these and then also touch based on the issue of the fans, Neil?
Sure. Yeah, happy to do that. Thanks, Alberto. Yeah, it's been a heavy process. I think that's a very apt way of putting it. On the 13th of March, the Scottish FA suspended the game in Scotland, initially until the end of April, and then that was later extended until mid-June. The Scottish Government did not allow full contact training to restart until after the 29th of June. So that meant that we simply were not able to finish season 1920. The board had limited powers to bring the season to an end, and so we went to the member clubs, and we needed 75% or more of the clubs to approve a resolution to curtail season 1920. And in the end, that resolution was passed by 80% of clubs on the 15th of April. So that brought to an end the second, third, and fourth tiers of Scottish football on a points per game basis. And the Premiership season, our top tier, was curtailed subsequently on the 18th of May after all top 12 clubs agreed that the season needed to be brought to an end. So we did that. Points per game was used, and that was used to calculate finishing positions, prize money, and European qualification. Two of the three clubs that were relegated by that process, that's Heart of Midlothian and Partick Thistle, took the case to the Scottish courts and to Scottish FA arbitration. A similar process was used in Wales, actually, against the Welsh FA. But fortunately for us, the court and the arbitration process ruled in favour of what the league had done, and that really drew a line under last season. That enabled us to start the season on time on the 1st of August, so we were one of the first leagues to restart season 2021, and we did so on a fully tested basis with PCR testing for all of our players in the top division, but behind closed doors, so no fans in stadia. Despite the testing that we've used, we have had several outbreaks for the virus in squads, and so we've had 6 matches postponed so far this season, with 15 rounds of fixtures played so far. We've consulted with clubs over additional powers for the board if we need to bring the season 2021 to an end early, and we've also consulted with clubs over the potential ability for the board to impose 3-0 defeats on clubs that are unable or unwilling to fulfil a fixture, but there was no consensus amongst clubs on that. So wherever a club can't fulfil a fixture, there would be a disciplinary, and we've got 2 ongoing disciplinary processes with our clubs at the moment. So there's been a huge impact on the league and on clubs. Claudius talked about some really quite fantastic support, financial support that the league and the clubs in Switzerland have enjoyed from their government. We are in Scotland the best supported league per head of the population anywhere in Europe. So roughly 1 in 48 of our 5.5 million people population in Scotland go to a game every week in a normal season. So we are therefore the league that's most heavily reliant on gate income, with around 60% of the league's income coming from fans. So from being arguably the hardest hit league, arguably we've also had the least support from government. So roughly there's about £70 million of losses so far incurred across the Scottish League, and that's likely to rise to around £100 million by the end of the season. So, quite a considerable amount more than that in euros. And despite that, we've had no financial support from the Scottish Government as yet, and there are no fans in Scottish stadia, and haven't been since the beginning of the season, other than up to 300 fans in 3 of our 42 clubs. So it's fair to say that we are encountering a difficult season so far. We remain very heavily reliant on fans coming back to stadia, and we've seen that in Northern Ireland. We've seen good financial support of clubs in Northern Ireland, the same in England and the same in Wales, but so far we are still awaiting financial support and the return of fans in any numbers from the Scottish Government.
Okay, thank you very much, Neil. And we also saw from the UK government, right, that there's been an announcement this week on past Monday, right, that should at least give some more flexibility according to the virus hitting the region for bringing back fans to the stadium. I guess that this is positive news also because you don't only have, Scottish Premier League is internationally known for, Celtic and Ranger and then rivalry, but you have additional 40 clubs. If you want a very small one, and then I guess that the same issues have Mats running also, clubs from the second division. The same is for Claudius and all the leagues across Europe, and clubs are very much suffering due to this. Unfortunately, the time at our disposal here was small. If you consider that we can probably talk for an hour regarding this. The good thing is that the leagues are going and running, and we are already almost crossing the first half of the season, and the technology and science is also helping. And probably after Christmas, we will have to include, a discussion of the vaccine and vaccination, for the overall society and for the clubs with the players, but also, and more importantly, for the fans, so that I'm pretty sure that we will have another opportunity to speak about these topics in a few months' time, so probably with additional positive notes. Unfortunately, our time is over, but it was enough to listen the opinion on a few points from the Swedish, the Scottish, and the Swiss leagues. And thanks again to the World Football Summit for hosting us and our members. And it's everything from our side. We give the floor back to David and the team. Thank you very much.
Concur. I think we do deserve more time on this topic, and hopefully we can have the representation of European leagues and indeed, some of your members, the likes of Neil, Claudius, and Mats to appear again on I'm sure many other topics that will come through over the coming months, especially as we work out how we respond to this pandemic and what we've learned, how that affects the operations of leagues going forward. I'm sure that we'd love to hear your perspectives on that. Alberto, thank you very much indeed for facilitating the discussion as well. We really do appreciate it. Right then, so go. We've got 3 more topics today, and the next one is, even if I do say it myself, absolutely mega. It's not often that you get a particular kind of individual in football speaking candidly, speaking openly in front of an audience like this, and that is perhaps the football agent. It'd be very interesting to hear what the likes of Mino Raiola, of course, who takes care of the likes of Paul Pogba and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and indeed Jonathan Barnett, who represents Gareth Bale, have to say as we focus next on the super agents of football. Stay with us.